How's it going, Laser Bruce? This is Bob Sixkilla. Welcome back to Head as Code. A has basically taken us. He didn't really give us much choice, but to go with him to check over some of the areas we've already been. And as a reward, he's going to tell us something he found when he was searching with E in the last one. So it might pay off, or we may be brutally murdered. I guess we'll find out. As usual, the little chime announcing the train's departure rang, and the doors closed. I wondered if the ones still in the lounge could hear it. That thing was pretty loud. Pro-chain station security. That's right. In the train, we had 2 stations to wait for, so I could ask him some things if I wanted. Sure. A's relationship with E would be a good start. Are you and E related somehow? A was searching for his words. That was somewhat rare of an occurrence for him. I suppose you could say we're merely acquaintances. Circumstantial acquaintances at that. We really didn't choose to know each other. The simplest way to explain it would be, I work for the company that has produced the headset and mask she wears. The 2 of those objects are very complex. That same company has made the pens you have in your possession too. My department specializes in reproduction, recreation, printing, or many kinds of printing. That is why those pens are the way they are. I unfortunately am not allowed to divulge what the purpose of the headset is. Trade secrets. He put a finger in front of his lips as if calling for silence. I see. The train came to a stop at a station. This wasn't our only stop, but we were getting there soon. It wasn't our stop. After a few seconds, the doors opened. After another few seconds, they closed. We remained silent as the train did its routine. The same chime from earlier sang its tune, and then we were off. Pro-chain station, laboratory. Since we have some time again, I quickly chose how to use it. A's bag and what it contains. Your bag is the only thing I've seen that hasn't been confiscated by Smiley so far. My phone, my wallet, everything's gone. It's the same for M. What exactly is in there, if it's not too rude? Oh, nothing special. All that's in there are my usual necessities. If I had to assume, I was left with this bag to better help communicate between the people here. Without it, I would have remained the only one who could talk with E. Though it would have been much simpler if he would have taken it away. I'm sure the fact that I have more possessions hasn't escaped the eye of many others in the group. It is such a shame. Perhaps they'll choose to trust me less as a result. He sighed and gave me a little smile, which made him look even older. I didn't really know what to think of his bag, to be entirely honest. One thing I knew, I didn't like that he had it. There was something in there that he didn't want anyone else to find out. Finally, the train slowed down and we came upon the station we'd been waiting for. Let's get a move on. It would be silly to make this walk any longer than necessary, after all. We do have to go back as well. Wouldn't you agree? I agreed, yet I remained uncertain of this man's motives. We both left the train and just as quickly we went for the lobby. The old man was leading the chase. He was moving rather rapidly, disregarding my pace. I felt as though he'd grown impatient. His manners were less polite than before. I felt it strange how he changed so much so quickly. We have things to discuss. I figure I may trust you with this kind of thing, but first, I must swiftly investigate this place to be certain of my hunch. Once we were in the laboratory, he quickly examined the room. First of all, I will share with you that I work for a very rich company as a researcher. You could say that the company has a goal to better humanity as a whole. However, I'll be straight with you. The company I'm a part of is doing some illegal activities. That's surprising. Shouldn't you want to hide this stuff? He didn't stop moving as he spoke. He shook his head. Of course not, because my role isn't to participate in these experiments, but to, as they say, take out the trash. You can think of me as some kind of internal secret police. There are some branches in this organization that are less reliable. Problematic, to put it simply, if they came to light. This is a rather unique location. He motioned at the entire room, but he didn't mean this room. Clearly this old man meant that the entire refurbishing of the metro was part of whatever he was investigating. When I say unique, I don't truly mean it, because we had another one very similar to this one somewhere else. He opened some drawers, looking at their contents. I looked over his shoulder and I noticed there was a knife rack. One of the knives was missing. Not long ago, there was a fantastical explosion which removed that other location completely. Are you talking about the one in New York? This wasn't in the plans at first, but that was the result to remove that problematic place. You mean the subway in New York? I am unable to say anything else about it. Breach of contract. At any rate, I'm here to bring Smiley to justice, and I require assistance. When we capture him, you will be hailed as a hero. He offered a smile. I could tell that he was genuinely looking for help, but was that because he was unsure about his own chances of success? That was a deal in which I had nothing to lose, though. Okay, but I'll need to know a lot more. I admire your inquiries, but I'll be unable to provide you with more details. It is on a need-to-know basis, unfortunately. Otherwise... He leaned in a little more. This whole time we've been talking very low, and I just noticed now. Smiley may catch wind of what I'm doing. He pulled back to where he'd been before. Now, I came here because I had a hunch about something that may relate to another object that I found earlier. Of course, at first I didn't think you and Jay would truly be hiding something from me. The old man took a glance towards the strong door. Cried he found it. Not that it was difficult to do, since it was pretty plainly in the open. For us to succeed, you are forbidden to keep this kind of knowledge from me. That is because of this. He reached into his bag and pulled out what looked like a strange remote. I handed it over. It had over 26 buttons on its surface, each labelled with a letter. Near the top was a small screen, showing a few asterisks. The man pushed a few more buttons and pointed the remote at the door, without a handle. The beep came from it signalled an error, and the screen cleared itself. I don't know how many attempts we have with this, but as I toyed with it earlier, I thought to perhaps enter some digits. Turns out this remote takes 5 of them. Unfortunately, he sighed, as if his lack of knowledge weighed as would the world upon his shoulders. I do not know the password. I believe this room is far more important than you might have previously thought. That is our primary search now. Wait, aren't we searching for the 9th person? Yes, but let's just say that is no longer our priority. Have you found them? I was slightly mistaken. It is not really a 9th person. I have great cause to believe that this remote is the object we're supposed to find. The 9th person probably is... The man nodded towards the strong door. In there? The best hiding place is a room people can't access. If I had to guess, this tool can be used to open any and all doors you may come across. Look at this door, for example. He reached for the wall and let his hand slowly come down to its smooth surface. It has no handle, yet it clearly is a door with a window, tantalizing us with the contents it holds. This would have no purpose to be shown if it wasn't something important. It may very well be where Smiley is as well. Watching on all these monitors and orchestrating our every move. I mentally calculated the amount of attempts one would need to brute force the remote's code. It'd be something like 26 to the power of 5, if what he said was true. And we had limited attempts. Doing that would be impossible. Of course, as I'm sure you're eager to leave, we cannot simply go right now. If you even managed to make your way out of here, maybe that too would have been part of Smiley's plan. Perhaps he intends on framing my organization, which is a beneficial entity, as a malevolent institution that needs to be caught and shut down. In reality, he is the criminal. Do you understand? I guess. But if we can leave, then I will. Is that fine for my terms? He didn't look too pleased with that, but he abdicated quickly. Very well. I guess those are the best terms I'll get out of you. Rest assured, as soon as we find the way in, I will let you go and you will be free. He handed me the remote. I took it with a slight surprise. This is my gift for you right now. If you find anything to let you use this remote by investigating other stations, you would do well to let me know. I leave it with you so that you may check for yourself. I have already memorized what the remote looks like, what its function seems to be, and the engravings on the back. As I held it, I realized there were little dots on the back. However, nothing of it, it's a braille, right? Nothing of it meant anything to me. So what are these for? Need to know basis. If it happens that this is important for me to share with you, I will. I didn't like how he insisted on keeping me in the dark, but also wanted me to cooperate. This is increasingly becoming a one-way deal. But wait, if this is where Smiley is, why would he give us a way to reach him? I honestly don't know. Perhaps in his insanity he has given us a fair chance. Let's not squander it. At any rate, our business here is concluded. I have deduced from your handling of E that you would be a most trustworthy individual to share in this endeavour. You should not share any of what I told you with anyone else, even your acquaintances. I have strong suspicions one of them is Smiley's accomplice. That is to say, a traitor. My eyes widened in apprehension and disbelief. I didn't think Jasmine or Marco could have been allied with Smiley. But even if they know, if everyone knows, wouldn't they be unable to act? Well, think of it that way. If we're all chosen at random and thus our fate didn't matter, and then they might kill everyone else until they could simply restart the entire thing with another mismatched cast of randomly picked individuals. And if the one I suspected suspect to be the accomplice is Smiley himself, then I have no doubt he wouldn't think twice before killing you, your friends, and everyone else. He put some emphasis on the mention of my friends. He did have a point. Before we go, do you doubt anybody in particular? I thought about the only people I really knew much about, Jasmine and Marco. I knew Marco. He did study in fields of science, so he wouldn't be incapable of setting this whole thing up. I just couldn't see him in that role. He was a buffoon. Perhaps he was a smart buffoon, but a buffoon nonetheless. Jasmine? It changed since I'd last seen her before all this. Perhaps Jasmine. Perhaps she might have been the accomplice. However, that was only a random guess, and I didn't want this man to suspect Jasmine. After all, there was an equal chance it could have been Ray. He had the physique to play the role of Smiley. He was incapable, angry, and always took sips. For all I knew, that could be an act. He was disabled and the twins were young. The chances they were involved in this were remarkably slim. After all, have you ever heard of a situation like this being orchestrated by a teen or a disabled person? No, I don't have any doubts. I'm trying to think about it, but nothing comes to mind. That was my first real lie. I knew about Occam's razor. It was an idea that went along these lines. If there are multiple competing explanations, the simplest one is usually correct. The problem was, that hypothesis was that Jasmine was the accomplice, and I didn't like that. Let us go down to take the train then. Surely, the most obvious choice is, Ray. Before he left, I took another glance at the big door. Beyond it, between the door and the room, was a tiny, very imperceptible set of scanners. It was equipped with them, much like any other exit hallway. What was the meaning behind that? Was this an exit too? I kept it to myself. This meant we needed to get that 9th person, even if A believed otherwise. As we stepped down the stairs, I figured A was right and this remote was the way to the 9th person. Then those scanners wouldn't make sense. It would be set up in such a way as to require the 9th person to reach the 9th person. Since that's clearly impossible, what was in that room had to be something else. I thought about it while we waited for the train, but nothing came to mind. It was a total enigma. Having said all that needed to be said, our travels back to the lounge was quiet. Are we there? We came back to the lounge where everyone else was waiting. Jasmine greeted us first. We were gone for quite a while. Many of us wondered if we should just go ahead and keep exploring, since it looked as though you'd gone to do that. I didn't mind being chided by Jasmine this time, but it was still slightly embarrassing. Despite that, I remember what A had told me. We shouldn't share our information. We took a long stroll, what can I say? How about we take a small pause and head out afterwards? Sounds good to me. Okay, that's fine, but not too long. There's little to do here anymore, and unlike you two, we've been holed up here the whole time. This is just my investigation, disguised as an offer to take a bit of a longer break. I need to keep watch for anything that can point me in the direction of the accomplice, if they even existed. I wanted to find Smiley just like A, but it was still difficult to trust the old man. For one, he didn't trust me with his name despite knowing mine, did he? At least he hadn't blackmailed me with it. Most of all, I wanted to leave this place alive with my friends. I don't really want to go into details, but there was a group of people at school who kept doing weird stuff. G was staring at H as if trying to accuse her of something, but I disregarded their little talk about their school disputes. I wanted solid material. I left them alone with Marco and A. Still, the fact that I'd been harassed by the cool guys during my own bad time at school might have played a part in why I was this afraid of things. The more I tried to chase the thought of the secret room from my mind, the more curious I grew. I thought about it. Anything to take my mind off the other subject. I shouldn't have given it that much attention and instead focused on simply getting out of here. But I had an irresistible desire to know. It was like if you were given a box with a button on top. If you're told not to press it, wouldn't you get the desire to do so, to see what would happen? The natural course of action is to not take unnecessary risks, so you wouldn't push it, of course. That's the safest path and nothing would happen. You'd simply resume your normal life. But there's a ghost that'll haunt you from that day onward. If the encounter had been memorable, you keep wondering, what if I'd pushed that button? Maybe I would have gained riches beyond my understanding. Maybe I would have gained immortality. Maybe I would have gained superpowers. Maybe it's just a button that did nothing at all. Curiosity killed the cat. I knew that proverb. I didn't care for the fixed version that said satisfaction brought it back. The proverb was a warning that if you ran headfirst into your curiosity, you might suffer from it. A bit like if you learn something, you can't unlearn it. If you didn't check what's in there, it would nag at me eternally, but it was definitely dangerous. Which one was the worst fate? So long as I didn't run headfirst into an abyss of darkness. So did anyone find anything regarding the ninth person? This took me out of my daydream. Right, the ninth person. I glanced over at A, who didn't even stare back in my direction. If we didn't, I'd like to head out now to investigate other places. There are stations we haven't searched yet. That's correct. According to the map the twins have found. He took it out of his bag. Most likely he'd taken possession of it when he spoke with the twins. It seemed A had more success in his investigation than I had. All eyes on him, he continued. There are a number of stations left to check, namely in the western direction. We have 3 stations, the pool, the rec room, which I assume stands for recreation, and the reactor. That sounds dangerous. Indeed. In the other direction, east then northward, we have 2 more stations, the church and the theatre. In total that makes 5, which even if we split up and cover them all, would leave 1 to be seen. I thought something was wrong with this map. There are a lot more stations than this in the metro. Did Smiley just run out of themes? If each location is themed around a single thing, then maybe that was the case? Perhaps his influence only extended to this much. It's possible that if we're looking for a 9th person, they may have been tasked with our avoidance, meaning they may be on the move as well. That's assuming Smiley spoke to them too, I think. Well, no. Think about it. If they're Smiley, they'd want to avoid capture. If they're an accomplice of Smiley, they would want to avoid us as well. The only scenario where the 9th person would want to be found is if it was one among us, and we were all here. All 8 of us. So your plan would also have us move around? Close. I think we should go westward with 3 teams, while a 4th goes through the stations on the other side. If they keep watch on the furthest away, then the 9th person won't be able to avoid them. Any objections? Nobody spoke. I didn't know what E thought of this plan, but he resumed before I could ask her. I frowned a little. He was moving a little quickly. I thought he might have wanted to personally inspect everyone else to make sure they weren't Smiley or his accomplice. Very good then. Let us form the teams. I wanted to go explore a new room, so I figured he'd take E, leaving me to go with someone else. The team on guard duty would most likely involve E because there'd be no puzzle room to solve. However, he requested to go with H, to which G vehemently opposed. I'd rather go with my sister if that's not an issue. Understandable, but there is an issue. I've come to the conclusion it would be way better off pairing up with others we're less familiar with. It might give us insight we would never have gotten otherwise. He flashed a reassuring smile. The twin ended up agreeing. Fine. I get that we're all in this together, and if we want to leave, we'll need every bit of knowledge we can get. As long as I don't have to go with the Pink Witch. Jasmine shrugged at everyone else under that nickname. While G, Mark, Ray, Marco, and Jasmine deliberated on who would pair up together, A approached me and suggested something interesting. I believe you should go with E. I know you may want to explore another station, but please, keep an eye on her, and go through the ones we've already explored. She wouldn't be very helpful in a puzzle room, and that way you can make sure nobody forgot to find something, either voluntarily or not. By the time I nodded, the deliberations coming from the other 4 were over. So I'll go with J then. I got something to ask you. Nothing big, but it might as well be then. Trying to find out what links us all here to? Something like that. Now shut up. A bit of heat rushed to my head, as if I was getting angry. Partially it was also envy. I did want to go with Jasmine, but I understood the weight of what I knew. I'm okay with it. And that way, G can go with them. The other 2 looked at each other. Marco looked extremely awkward. Despite his usual, most likely fake confidence, he was really bad at meeting new people, especially if they weren't in his age range. Then it settled. Let us make way for the train. Although I suppose our 4th group might want to go the other way, yeah? Why's that? S and E have been elected for guard duty while we explore those 3 stations. I clenched my teeth. That's what you decided, you duplicitous old man. Oh well. In the end I wasn't too angry, but I understood him a little better. He really likes spinning words in his favour. As long as you don't stick on the train for too long, or else it'll take you somewhere you can't come back from. Once our 3 teams are done, we'll go back and fetch you. Yes, hopefully that's fine. Let's go already. The earlier we go, the earlier we're out. All of them left after brief farewells, leaving the 2 of us alone. In a way, I wasn't too mad about going with E. Though wording it that way was embarrassing on some level. I explained the situation to her since A neglected doing it. It took many papers and it was long and laborious. In the middle of it, I heard the train come and go downstairs. Finally, I finished telling her everything. As I'd heard no train pass by, the 9th person wouldn't be getting by us yet. Still, I remember what A had told me. The 9th person may very well be stationary too. I didn't truly believe they were mobile, so I was probably going to explore a station regardless. Let us go now. We have wasted enough time. The others have been gone for a while, right? Even if she couldn't see me, I nodded. Force of habit. I took her to the other side of the station, down the stairs, into the lobby. Beyond it was the station. Then we waited for the train in silence. I had very little to tell her. Instead, I tried to think about how I would tackle this strange endeavour. I wanted to try and unlock the door, but with limited chances it wouldn't go so well. Re-exploring the station was also a waste of time, so I ignored it on our trajectory. Instead, we were going to explore... Crud, I forgot what the next one was. The official name was something or another, but what was there again, according to the maps? The old man had them and I forgot what it was. When the train arrived, I stepped in it with E. This entire trip would be a little boring. I didn't really have anything to tell E at the moment and nothing much happened. The theatre? The door's closed, or the church, if we're going that way. Pro-chain station security. As the train left the station, I suddenly remembered what it would be. Right, it was a security room. The footage from the cameras looked pretty interesting to search. Maybe I'd find some secret. Knowledge is power, huh? If I learned something A wanted to know, maybe I could use that to get him to admit everything he's doing. Need to know basis my hours. I grumbled to myself in Ray fashion before the train came to a stop. Grabbing E's hand, I pulled her out of the train, and we both made for the staircase. Suddenly I felt a shiver. This is dangerous. I didn't know anything of what was up these staircases. We could only be 2 at these stations, so I wrote to E on the paper. I didn't want her to come up. It may have been slightly more dangerous to leave her down here, but it wouldn't be good if she came up and we got beheaded because the 9th person was there. She nodded to me understanding, and I was off to the lobby. Up the stairs, and finally in the room proper. It had tons of screens. The twins solved this room, but I couldn't tell exactly what they did. In the middle of the room there was a computer. I tried accessing it, I found some files. There was a second room and I'd get to it, but this seemed promising. I found many files, but they were all named gibberish and they were all encoded too. I couldn't watch any of them, even if they were clearly video footage. What is the screen looking at? What am I seeing? There was only one screen turned on, and the footage showed parts of a spacious room. There was a large arch right in the front of the camera. On it hung some kind of hooked object. Nothing was happening in its view. I figured no one went through that room. Either the theatre or the church then. I went to check the other room next to this one, but seeing it was full of electronics, I decided to cut to the chase and leave to head back down to the station. Sure, there were electronics, but nothing was functional. When solved, that room probably shut down on its own. Back downstairs, I passed a paper over to E, explaining the situation and what was upstairs. She giggled at my predicament. I didn't know what was so funny. Do you like spying on people when they don't know you're around? Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. I blushed a little at that accusation. Was this the time for teasing? What was up with these women doing this to me all the time? First Jasmine, now E. I took her hand and pulled her over as the train arrived. Oh, are we done here? No more spying? If this had been Marco, I would have punched his shoulder. Even though I said I wouldn't leave at the science lab, I did anyway for a very cursory search. As I thought, nothing new was there. The next one was the one A had previously investigated. I thought it was a bit of a useless search, but I went to it anyway. The room was full of beds, supplies of the medical kind, and so on and so forth. I didn't know how to use any of the devices in the room. I decided not to try, even if I felt that curious need pulling at me again. There was no sign of a password. I found various items like a tablet that wasn't in order. Some other things stood out. Remnants of a puzzle they had to solve here. I reclined on a bed for a minute or so. It was rather comfortable. Still, I had a job to do, so I left the area and went down to the lobby. Just like the other stations, E had been left downstairs. Poor girl must have grown fairly bored by now. Maybe that explained why she'd teased me not just once, but every time I came back down and told her about what I'd found. Oh, I know this. I came to this room earlier with Agnos. He solved most of it, but I did help a little. He let me touch an object, and I guess it had to do with opening a door due to the button layout. The back had some braille too, even if he didn't let me read that part. I was surprised. First of all, I now knew the old man's name, but also, she hadn't teased me. Not only that, but I also learned the dots on the back of the remote was braille. Called it. She was a goldmine of information. Hey, you should have taken me up there too. Given my state, I need an operation. Stat. You can be the doctor, right? She smiled and hid it halfway behind her hand. Perhaps I hadn't avoided the tease in the end. I sighted the face of all this while grabbing her hand and pulling her over to the train. Since it had arrived, it was time to head to the final station before I could explore a new one. In the train, I took a seat much like E did. I crossed my arms and decided to think over the subject of our names, as Agonos finally became revealed to me. Come to think of it, I thought Jasmine was the one who came up with the nicknames. At the time, it sort of made sense. I could understand the point, but now it didn't make sense. Protein Station. Gymnasium? Why would she want to hide her name? Or my name? They weren't really rare names. It wouldn't really identify us, except for Agnes. Agonos. That was a weird name. Jasmine had made them up at his suggestion. It wasn't like I knew E, G, and H's names either. Maybe it was also a problem for one of them. I was curious, but it didn't feel right asking the first of that lineup. I had the opportunity, but neither the courage or the willingness to be rude. I didn't want to ruin her companionship. She was comfortable. Not really nice, not really annoying, just comfortable. That was the best way to describe how I felt around her. She was very soothing and calm, and I don't know, she was interesting. How many hours had it been since I arrived here? It must have been a few at least. That sandwich I found and consumed was fairly far in the past now. Come to think of it, I blindly trusted that sandwich, didn't I? Well, Marco did first, so yeah. What if it had been poisoned? I shuddered at the thought while I waited for the train to arrive at the last of the 4 stations we were to re-explore. Unfortunately, I spent a little too long thinking about it. And it's leaving. In my daydream and my eagerness to reach the next station, I didn't realise it had already stopped there. By the time I did, the speakers spoke again. Protein Station. Eglise? Crap. If the 9th person was at the gym station, they would have avoided my notice. What were the chances of them being there anyway? What were the chances of them being a mobile person at all? The train stopped momentarily. I disembarked with E and then I explained to her how this wasn't an old station but a new one, using a piece of paper which came from a quickly dwindling supply in my bag. Oh, that sounds good for me still. Sorry about all this trouble, having to lug me around like a useless person. I hope I'll be of more service soon. Come to think of it, I couldn't really tell her age, but she looked remarkably young. I did believe she was the slightly older adult, so maybe she was still in her late 20s? I wonder what she did. Did she study? Did she have a job? I wanted to ask her, but in the immediate, I couldn't do it. We needed to hurry up if we wanted to solve this room quickly. I'll ask her after we're done here. We entered the lobby. The door closed behind us as usual. Wasting no time, we went up the stairs. What greeted us when we arrived up there was strange. I knew what the speakers had said on the way here. They talked about a church. However, never in my wildest dreams would I have figured out that it was literally a church. What the fuck else would it be? If it said church, it's a church, right? I haven't been in a church for a long, long time. This is a big place. I looked up. The ceiling was very, very high. A part of me wanted to stick around to appreciate the architecture, but we were pressed for time. Huh? A church? How weird. I don't know how much use I can be. If you find anything, let me know. Using a sheet of paper, I shared with her my first impression. E sat on a bench following her words, and I was free to look around the place. Crack the code. Well, I think we're going to wrap this one up here instead, and we will crack the code in the next one, because we are out of time for today. But it's nice to be exploring with E now, and we've got a new room to do, which is good, because I didn't think we were going to get one. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.